He was short, he was Corsican, and he wore a hat that mocked geometry itself. Napoleon Bonaparte wasn't the kind of man to count sheep before bed. He preferred counting kingdoms, preferably the ones he had just invaded. To him, Europe wasn't a continent. It was a badly organized board game, and somehow he believed he was the only one who had read the rules. And while you, comfortably tucked under your blanket, prepared to drift into sleep, he was out there somewhere between Austerlitz and Waterloo, writing laws no one asked for and naming countries after his cousins. Napoleon's life was a whirlwind of sharp uniforms, sharper ambitions, and an ego so large it could be seen from space, if only satellites had existed back then. He was the man who crowned himself emperor, because why let a pope steal your thunder when you can do it yourself with a flair that screams, "Look at me, I'm the boss now." He had the kind of confidence that made people either follow him blindly or run screaming in the opposite direction. His strategic mind was legendary, orchestrating battles with the precision of a chess master who never let you see his next move. Yet, there was also the absurd side. The man who decided that invading Russia in winter was a splendid idea, ignoring every survival instinct his generals tried to whisper in his ear. Napoleon was a paradox wrapped in a tricorn hat. He was a soldier, a reformer, a dictator, and an accidental fashion icon who made that crooked hat famous for centuries. He created the Napoleonic Code, a set of laws designed to bring order. But let's be honest, it was mostly his way of stamping his name on everything, from courtrooms to coffee tables. Now we're going to see ambitions in the grand game. Napoleon saw himself as Europe's rightful ruler, a man destined to bring order out of chaos, or at least his version of order, which involved lots of marching, banners, and occasional fireworks. He treated diplomacy like a high-stakes poker game, bluffing and betting with the confidence of someone who had already won in his mind. But the world was a stubborn place, not easily rearranged according to one man's will. Every time Napoleon conquered a new territory, he promptly appointed a family member as king, because nepotism, apparently, was a royal hobby. Cousins, brothers, sisters-in-law. Europe's thrones quickly started looking like a very confused family reunion. His ambitions made him a titan of the age, but also planted the seeds of his downfall. For every crown he placed on his relatives' heads, resentment grew like weeds in a neglected garden. Now we're going to see battles from glory to disaster. Napoleon's battles are legendary, not just because of the sheer scale or the blood spilled, but because of the mix of genius and madness that defined each campaign. Austerlitz was his crown jewel, a dazzling display of military choreography that stunned the world. Picture thousands of soldiers moving like clockwork, as if the entire battlefield were a stage and Napoleon the master conductor. He outsmarted the combined armies of Austria and Russia, turning what looked like certain defeat into a masterpiece of victory. His tactics were swift, brutal, and cunning, like a chess player who doesn't just see the next move, but the entire game several steps ahead. But Napoleon's luck wasn't eternal. The infamous Russian winter was his cruelest opponent, a foe he never quite managed to outwit. His grand army, once a force to be reckoned with, became a ghostly procession through endless snow and biting cold. Imagine soldiers, starving and freezing, trudging forward only to realize nature itself was the deadliest enemy. The biting frost, hunger, and endless retreats turned the campaign into a nightmare from which the Grande Army never truly recovered. The Russian winter wasn't just cold. It was the Grim Reaper in a frozen coat, reminding Napoleon that even the greatest plans can be undone by something as simple as a change in weather. Then came Waterloo, the final curtain on his spectacular career. Surrounded by enemies, betrayed by old allies, and outnumbered, Napoleon's forces crumbled. The battle was fierce and chaotic, but it ended like a tragic play with the mighty emperor losing his throne, his dream of European domination shattered like fragile glass underfoot. After Waterloo, exile wasn't just a punishment, it was an erasure of the grandeur he once radiated. First Elba, a small island where he played king of a tiny patch of land. Then St. Helena, a remote speck in the vast Atlantic, where his final days were marked by reflection, regret, and the fading echoes of cannon fire. The Napoleonic Code, law with a Napoleon stamp. Amid all this war and conquest, Napoleon was also a builder of systems, a man who understood that true power wasn't just won on the battlefield, but in the courts and streets of everyday life. The Napoleonic Code was his legal masterpiece, a brutal, clear-cut set of rules designed to tear down the chaos of feudal laws that varied wildly across France. This code wasn't about making friends. It was about making order. It swept away the privileges of the aristocracy, championed the idea that merit mattered more than birth, and created a legal framework so neat and ruthless that it still influences the laws of dozens of countries today. It was Napoleon's way of stamping his personality onto society, efficient, practical, and unyielding. Even if the emperor's armies fell, the code promised his legacy would live on, quietly shaping lives and courts long after the cannons fell silent. Downfall and exile, the end of the emperor's march. Napoleon's downfall was a story of dramatic irony, like a Shakespearean tragedy set on a muddy battlefield. After Waterloo, the dust settled not on a triumphant victor, but on a defeated man, stripped of his crown and dreams. The great conqueror surrendered, not with a roar, but with the quiet resignation of a man who knew the game was finally up. Exile wasn't just a punishment, it was a cosmic joke. Sent to St. Helena, a speck of rock so isolated it made Elba look like a bustling city, Napoleon was effectively cut off from the world he once ruled. Imagine a man who had commanded hundreds of thousands, now confined to a tiny island surrounded by ocean and security guards, like a celebrity locked in a very expensive, very lonely penthouse with no Wi-Fi. His final years were spent in a peculiar mix of nostalgia and stubborn defiance. He paced the rocky grounds, dictating memoirs filled with grand plans for a comeback that never came. The man who had once believed he could bend Europe to his will now had only the endless ocean and his fading memories for company. Visitors came to see the fallen titan, curious to witness the man behind the myth. Some saw a broken despot, others a misunderstood genius, but all felt the heavy weight of a legacy too large to ignore. Napoleon's exile turned into a slow, bitter epilogue. His dreams dissolved like mist in the Atlantic winds. His name whispered in history books, but no longer shouted from thrones or battlefields. Even his captors must have had a mix of respect and frustration. After all, you don't cage a storm and expect it not to howl. Legacy, the man, the myth, the cake. Napoleon was small in stature, but enormous in impact, like a pocket-sized hurricane that left destruction, order, and pastries in its wake. His influence stretched far beyond the battlefield, carving out new laws, new political ideas, and yes, even new fashions. That unmistakable bicorn hat, tilted just so, became an icon, a symbol of ambition and style that still appears in caricatures and Halloween costumes alike. The Napoleonic Code alone would be enough to secure his place in history. It replaced the confusing patchwork of feudal laws with a clear, rational system that championed merit over birthright. Suddenly, being noble wasn't enough. You had to prove your worth. This legal revolution rippled through Europe and beyond, influencing legal systems across continents, proving that even in defeat, Napoleon's ideas marched on. And then there's the unexpected crown jewel of his legacy, the Napoleon cake. Yes, a dessert named after the man who tried to conquer Europe. It's as if someone decided that no matter how fierce a conqueror you are, you deserve to be immortalized in layers of flaky pastry and creamy custard. Maybe it's a little ironic, or maybe it's just delicious. Either way, it's a reminder that history is messy, unpredictable, and sometimes sweet. So, as you settle into sleep, picture Napoleon, not as a distant, dusty figure in textbooks, but as the little giant with a hat too big for his head, marching endlessly across Europe, fueled by dreams, ambition, and perhaps a secret craving for the perfect. So here we are, at the end of our journey through the rise and fall of history's littlest giant. Napoleon, a man who turned his size into legend, whose battles shook continents and whose laws shaped societies, remains a figure both mighty and oddly human, flawed, ambitious, and always a bit unpredictable. Hey, are you awake? Or just floating, waiting to drift off? You probably had a long day. Before you close your phone or PC, tell me, what time is it for you? Midnight? 2 a.m.? Are you listening from the US, the UK, maybe somewhere even further? Whatever the hour, thank you for sharing these moments with me. Sleep well, and see you soon.